Hello. Do you like making things and or watching videos of other people making things? Will you avoid doing the things you actually have to do? Well, I have great news! I'm gonna make some really pointless stuff. For personal and clickbait reasons, I am going to begin making a bust of Weird Al Yankovic. As a former super cool tween, I really like Weird Al. I think Straight Out of Linwood might have been one of the first CDs I got ever. Basically, I wanted to make a bust, and I wanted to make it out of someone recognizable. That helps people say good job. If they know what it's supposed to look like and it looks like it, then they'll be like, oh, hooray. Excellent job. I live for praise. Also, I felt weird making a bust out of someone who wasn't a public figure. It's a very particular thing to make a more formal sculpture. My cat is pawing at the window.
But it's like 100 degrees out today and I'm not going to open it because I already have the AC off in order to film this with less noise pollution.
Weird Al seems like he'd be down, and he's certainly depicted himself in enough ways that having someone, really intently focus on the features of his face to depict it for art seems like he'd be chill. Also, I've remembered that meme that was going around of like him posing next to a Renaissance painting. Basically has the same hairstyle and features as the painting, and so I figured I could do something really fun because he has so much like distinctive hair. See these examples for what I mean. Like, this is going to be kind of a tutorial. I can't imagine any person other than some long-lost twin I might have out there who would follow this with the explicit purpose of actually making their own bust of Weird Al. If you do want to make a bust, you can get Sculpey. It's great stuff. Now I'm gonna use it to make a statue of a dude who does parody songs. Let's do it. I'm gonna start off, I need some reference images of Weird Al. It helps to have a similar expression from multiple angles. And I want it to also, have some Weird Al energy, not just be like a random dude. Ooh, you can see me in the reflection of this. Hello. But I found a couple that are forward facing. I am starting to forget what people who aren't Weird Al look like. Let's get some basic going. I have very little of a plan here, but there's no better way to start than by starting, even if you start poorly. And that's something I tell myself every day. I'm just gonna get a head shape going. What do you think? Quarantine's going great, by the way. Now's when you get to start working out your hands and relieving any stress you might have. Oh, thank God I can finally cut away from that shot. It is so blurry, and the only thing in focus are my dirty dishes. Anywho, after making a vaguely skull-shaped ball of tinfoil that's hollow on the inside, I began to cover it in clay, just kind of go in with big flat tubes at a time. If you're wondering why I fill it out with foil, it's mostly because I'm cheap. Clay is expensive and heavy. Plus, if you do have a solid clay piece, you really have to be careful about where the air holes and air circulation is, because it can cause things to crack or even explode. If you have something that looks kind of like a melting Halloween skull, congratulations, you're underway. The gist in this kind of part is really getting the bone structure, the skeleton, the general shape, all that stuff that you can't change later right. Excuse me. Stuff you can change later, any detail element, eye shape, lips, all that. One thing that people a lot of times get stuck on when they're starting, especially a bigger project, is the idea of starting big,
Getting small.
How basic of a shape can you reduce something down to? And right now, this is a blobby long thing, but not a blobby long thing, unlike Weird Al Yankovic's head, maybe. Now here's where I start trying to add the soft tissue, so things like lips and eyelids and all of that, while also trying to not sound like a serial killer while talking about adding soft tissue. But you really start thinking about the architecture of our heads when you really get into this kind of stuff. My apologies for any unintentional Hannibal Lecter vibes. We're a few hours in. Overall, I don't think it's too terrible of a start. Definitely, there's a a slant happening here that's weird. The chin's jutting out way too much. I always have a difficult time creating that shape that doesn't just, you know, end up uncanny valley. It really quickly can just look off, and it can be really hard to pinpoint why, I think. So I'm gonna focus on the face because that's the most important part, and screw the ears because I hate drawing and painting and sculpting ears. They have too many little wiggly flesh bits and I never make them look right. But I'm definitely gonna build out the hair because it has a lot of volume and I don't want to use just straight clay. But I'll give that a thicker layer so I can carve into it with the like curled effect. This is barely a tutorial, but oh well. And I always, no matter if it's a painting or a sculpture or whatever in a museum, I want to touch it. The good news is when you make your own art, you can do whatever you want to it. Isn't that right? Progress! Our buddy here is looking pretty good, although there is some distortion with the head shape. With the lower half of the jaw, it kind of gave him like a that. So I'm going to shift it away from the jam jar to this, which I'm hoping will give me a better sense. We'll see how that goes. I don't want to ruin the jaw. Okay, that's pretty good. I have a very weird puppet, but I think Al's looking pretty good as a starter. I need to fill out, you can see he is totally hollow on the inside. Can have a little like Shakespeare moment. I'm forgetting the name. Oh gosh. Yorick? Yorick. I have kind of a Yorick pre-decomposition. I can give my best. If we were not, forsooth, the eternal divine fates aligned against us, we surely would never have become what we are doomed to do in accidentally killing the fathers of our girlfriends who we totally ghost on, and then she goes and, you know, we really should have been more supportive there. Oscar nomination goes to Al over here. Did you ever wonder if artists personify the things they're working on? I mean, what else are you supposed to do with them? It's a face. It's not. This is so weird. I'm talking in my apartment alone to a weird Al face that I'm making. Hello, lighting changes. I wanted that to go smoother. Got some construction to do. His head basically looks like it's been cut diagonally off because I didn't want to do anything for the neck yet. But I think I have to. Something, you know, you gotta be aware of if you're trying to do specific individuals is that if your art is bad, it can basically be an insult. You don't want it to be unflattering. If it turns out badly, then yikes. Like the scene in Napoleon Dynamite where he gives the girl the drawing and it is not endearing. Like I definitely had an art teacher once who I feel like I left the room for something at some point and came back, and like when I came back he was explaining how to just like the basics of like kind of portraiture stuff, but he did use me as an example. The things I didn't know that, so I came back and I saw this image on the whiteboard and was just like, ugh. And then he was like, oh, hi Jenny, like look, we're using you to test out. And I was like, that's what you think I look like? Kitty break. And you claimed my tripod bag. Good for you. Oh, you're so pretty. You're the reason why there's hair in everything I make. Honestly, this is going much better than I thought it would. All right. Moving away from random jars, I now provide structure by shoving aluminum foil up there. Cute! I know what I'm gonna do. We're trying something. I'm gonna take some toothpicks and see if I can do a little scaffolding with them. Sculpey, especially when it's warm, is really soft and squishy, so the toothpicks give something for the foil to wrap around, which will then be coated by the clay since the clay can't give itself structure. Not unlike how I feel about myself and time management during quarantine. Ooh, even more terrifying. They look like little legs that like walk along. It's much easier to shape the foil around into a neck form with the toothpicks there, and hopefully making this all less of a fever dream. Despite what you would think, a bust doesn't include the busty part. It'll kind of just go like down here and then like a scoop. I do want to have something for the long hair to rest on. And I start the shoulders with, that's right, more foil. We are on to Pound 2 of Sculpey. We're finally at the fun part, where you can move beyond your sculpture looking like the most cursed mannequin in all of Kohl's, and hopefully start getting it into something resembling art, whatever that is. But I really love trying to figure out features this way. It really is kind of an investigation in figuring out which shapes and indentations and just like little tiny details that really make someone appear lifelike. While I am a big fan of using my hands as my primary tools while I'm sculpting, at this point when it becomes into the finer details and nooks and crannies, that's when tools and different kinds of shaping items, whether it be the ends of paintbrushes or specific clay tools, those really become necessary. You can see I go back and forth between this metal thing that has a kind of curved spoon end and toothpicks to just good old fingers for smoothing things out. This was probably a little too early for me to add pupils here, but there's something about having pupils that helps your brain recognize it as a face, and then you're able, or at least I'm able, to more accurately judge whether or not, we're moving forward or away from abomination zone. Here, I'm also adding wrinkles, crinkles, folds, shadows, all of the dips and bumps that make someone look alive. Even though we may consider them to be imperfections, they're actually something that we're trained to recognize. New day. I can't do stuff like this in one day because also I have a real job. After a while, it just kind of turns into a funhouse mirror for me, and I can't tell what feature is what. It's looking like Weird Al, but I am also getting some creepy Buzz Lightyear vibes, which might just be because I haven't added the hair yet. I must leave you and this terrible lighting to go do my real job. Hello. I hope I'm in the frame. Day 2. Nope. We're okay. I'm on my lunch break. I've been trying really hard not to mess with this, and that has been difficult because this is a lot more fun than email. I still am getting Farquaad Buzz Lightyear vibes. I wasn't filming it all when I did work last night because I was lazy. It's really a lot of stuff that on camera it doesn't look like much. It's a lot of trial and error of me spending time being like, is the nose too big? Is the nose too small? Should I add more? Does that make it look more or less like him? I don't know. Portraiture is a very unique acquired skill that I am learning. There's that quote from Michelangelo. The angel was already in the marble, he just set it free. Don't understand that at all. He's doing marble, which means he's just producing, which I feel like is so much higher stakes than this kind of stuff, because like, I dropped this earlier and it was fine. Let's get some hair going on. All right, no new techniques here. I am just balling up foil and then covering it with clay. Hey, I bet you guys didn't know that Weird Al had a hair metal phase. All right, fine. I will stop with that, but I want you all to know that I am also seeing comparisons to a kind of techno George Washington that's forming before me. Honestly, at this point, I still wasn't quite happy with how big that the hair was going to be, but I had a thought that I might actually be adding additional curls on top rather than carving them out at this point. But I still did add some waviness and ridges to the edges to kind of start getting that effect going, which weirdly enough kind of felt like forming the edges of a pie crust when you kind of do that crimping, but whatever works, works. Hello. It is around the time that I currently go to bed, and I'm hoping that I don't wake up the boyfriend doing this, because waking up your significant other while you're trying to YouTube is very, 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 very embarrassing. I'm doing some fiddly work while not recording, because I kept telling myself that I wasn't actually working on it. I was just like, needed to fix this one little thing, and then I had worked on it a lot. I also have here a can that I cut the top and bottom out that I decided I'm going to use as structure for the pedestal part of the bust, and to do so I have carved out some of the foil. I'm going to try and spear this into there and then build ornately decoration stuff around that part. What do you think, Elle? I believe my thought process here was that if I wrap the foil around both the can and the head, I will better secure them into one entity, but honestly, it just made it way harder to cover the can. So looking back, I would do that differently. Also because it tipped over several times during this that, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, weren't captured by the time lapse. But yeah, I made a cylinder for it to sit on, and it is made of trash, and I'm kind of proud of that. After that great success, I took it as a sign that I should probably just go to bed. And this is where I started doing the plan that I mentioned earlier, and immediately gave up on it because I realized that instead of mimicking another material, specifically marble in this case, because it is solid, you can carve into it and create those little details without it so losing that definition. However, because I'm working with clay, it was much, much, much easier to just make a bunch of tiny coily snakes and place them on the head. Look how many snakes I made. It's a regular old Medusa up in here. And then right now, I am going in with a little MacGyver tool I made because I don't own enough, all the clay tools that I currently need, but it's just a little wire loop that I'm going through here to start giving the pedestal part a bit more of a column look. Obviously the foil is showing through right now, but I'll clean that up before I'm done. At this point, I had used up all of the 3 pounds of Sculpey I'd started with, so if you're wondering why it looks a little patchy, that's why. Sure, I could have ordered more and then waited for it to arrive, but I'm way too impatient for that. But hooray! Now I can finally start tackling my true nemesis, all of that damn lint. I only recently learned the wonders of using hand sanitizer on Sculpey in order to smooth it out, much like one would use water on a more traditional clay. Hand sanitizer, while it is a precious commodity right now, really was just fantastic for getting that smooth stone effect. It was at this point I took a picture of the statue with my phone, flipped it back and forth, and then proceeded to have a crisis about how it wasn't symmetrical enough, and thus all of my hard work had been for nothing. Eventually I calmed down and just kind of evened things out. Alright, after a truly ridiculous amount of smoothing, I think I'm ready for the oven. I think Al is ready for the oven. But here's all of the fingers crossed that it doesn't crack or explode or get ruined. While I'm waiting for the oven to heat up, I remembered a question that no one's actually ever asked me, but I think about a lot while I'm doing stuff. How do you know when you're done? For me, the answer is I decide when I'm done when I feel like I've reached the point of no return, and that any additional work I do seems likely to make it worse than better. There's probably some stuff on this that I could do a little bit more. You know, the columns aren't entirely straight in some of the ways and all that, but I'm happy with where it's at. My fear of ruining it is greater than my desire or thought that it could be improved. The oven just beeped. 275. The Sculpey recommendation is 15 minutes for every 1/4 inch of thickness, which I don't know what that comes out to be, so I'm gonna do like 30 to 40, probably 30. I'm afraid of burning this, but it's in a baking sheet and it's gonna go in.
Be well, my pretty.
Luckily, it was not ruined, and I had extra company while I worked that day. I finished it after I took it out of the oven. I smoothed off a couple parts with
Did you forget the word file?
Yes.
All right.
From there, I did a clear coat of matte Mod Podge gloss, which is a contradiction, but it just kind of gives it a nice sheen that I think helps mimic the idea of polished stone, even though it is just oven bake plastic clay around a brick of foil and a beer can that's now hidden by some felt on the bottom. With the last couple nights, I kind of had to pull myself away from making little changes because making faces look like the people they're supposed to is really darn hard. I still go back and forth depending on how good I'm feeling about myself, how much I think it really does look like him, and that corresponding with, you know, all of my artistic talent and then therefore my worth as a human being. So there was some additional, even after glazing, just going in and filing and then glazing and then telling myself I was done and then staring at it more and then filing and glazing. But eventually I stopped because I know from history that me staying up late and agonizing over small details leads to me ending up with about 50% less eyebrows. So, you know, the art confidence comes and goes, but I'm really happy with how it turned out. I hope you enjoyed getting to see this very long process video for an extremely specific project. And I hope I can keep making stuff like this because I really like making stuff. I think that would be a cool thing to continue to do. So if you watch this, thanks. And now I just need to figure out what one does with a bust of Weird Al, because you'd be shocked at how little I thought of that before this. I didn't really plan that far ahead. Made a joke without even trying.